Hi guys, so we're back for season 3 of the Schbanging It podcast. They say the agency life is a means to an end. By that, you work your way up till you can get that dream client job. Today's guests have sort of reshaped that paradigm. People who have worked in the agency game, move to the client side and then come back to the agency game. Is it because the agency game is better? Is it because the client life is boring? We'll find out with our guests. Our vice presidents at Schbang, the backbone of our solutions teams, Jennifer Chor and Aayush Vyas. So hi guys. Nice
Hello.
having you all on the Schbang It podcast. Don't be so weird. Yeah, we hang out all the time. This is not Coffee with Karan. There's no
Fine.
hamper at the end of it. Maybe Harsh is going to give us a danda. But that being said, you all are guests on season 3, and I think this is a conversation that a lot of us who have been involved in the podcast found very interesting, because I think it's something that all of us, both of you all have had a long, illustrious career already, and hopefully many, many more years to come. But from the very start, before I think I can speak for myself, and I'd like to hear from you all as well. But from the point that I joined the agency game, I think I was always under the impression that, hey, I have to just be able to sharpen my teeth enough so that I can land that big corporate job. And as the time went on, for me at least, that allure of a corporate job just became a little bit less, to a point where I today believe that I don't think, at least on the marketing side of it, I could go to a corporate job. Maybe that's because I'm an agency product through and through, and I've been in the agency game for almost a decade. But I'm really interested to find out from each of y'all what prompted y'all to make the switch. Both of y'all have super different trajectories, in the sense that Aayush, I think you were at a little bit more new age startup type of corporate brand, which obviously scaled tremendously. Jennifer, you stuck with the more conventional ones, obviously massive players in both the FMCG and the personal care space. But what sort of brought you all back to the agency game? What was it that I think pulled you in?
I think the largest piece for me was the job satisfaction that you get over here. The flavor of work that you get with the fact that you can work across categories, across clients. You're not limited to a certain set of brands, and just the entire culture. You're learning quicker. You get to interact with so many different departments. It's a constant learning curve versus at the client side.
But don't you feel like the large companies that you were a part of had so many different elements? Again, I'm talking from the outside looking in. I have no real idea of the inside. There's marketing, there's sales, there's PR, there's corporate events. There's a lot of that jargon that you hear right on the corporate side of it. So is it limiting? Are you not allowed to move around and try your hand out or other things?
So most of these companies, FMCG, personal care, etc., they're not accustomed to having digital people. So they'd have a digital person, they'd have a PR person, but beyond a point, they don't know what growth is for that person. So you can be a digital manager, you can move up to another level, and then the digital head. But until there's room to grow, you're just moved around on different brands, you get flavors, work across countries, continents, and that's the kind of mix that you have. Unless it's a company that radically wants to change a lot of stuff. And wants to give you different spaces to work on. So digital manager could work on say new product development.
Okay.
But getting into a brand manager role is something that we're not accustomed to doing. So the learning is very different, and for that you have to play a very linear role. Go to do an area sales manager stint, then come to the HR
so it's
work.
very structured.
It's
you can't break that structure and
it's very structured.
Leapfrog that. You said something really interesting, I think, before, when you were starting that out also. You said that today when you're working there, the roles of growth are only dependent if the digital head is leaving or is retiring, or for whatever reason that role becomes vacant. So you're saying necessarily that your growth is sort of in some way linked to the tree above you, that until they move to the rung above them, you can't move to that next step. Is that
yes,
a thing that
because
happens?
There's the way you need a brand manager for every brand, a digital manager manages a cluster. So beyond the point, after you work across the clusters, and a company has a limited number of brands, beyond that, it's just a shuffle around until there is room for you to go to the next step.
Got it. And Aayush, yours is a little different experience in comparison to hers, where you did not I'm not saying that White Owl by any stretch was and is not a super successful, I think, Indian business story, but you did not have multiple brands in that wheelbarrow to play with. You did not have that opportunity, like she said, to talk about, say, go into the PR aspect. I'm sure as you were working with them in a creative as well as in a marketing capacity, so I'm sure you donned a lot of hats. But how was your journey at let's call it a new age corporate, different from, let's say, Jennifer's, who has, I think, been with companies that have been here for at least about 100 years?
I've been now, just like you, almost a decade in this space. For a long time, I don't come from this space at all. I'm an engineering dropout. I've done a couple of years in the merchant navy, and
Interesting.
earlier earlier, a lot of my formative years have been very regimental.
Okay.
Uh, that sort of led me to where I am, where I'm still very regimental in things that I do, but I cannot thrive without chaos. And
Nothing says chaos like an agency.
yes, and I understand structures, I understand processes, but there has to be a method to the madness. And this is my third organization. I generally do long term stints, and for me, as soon as I find myself settling down, I tend to
Move. You want
move
to like
on.
stay, keeping it different.
Yeah. So for me, the even the brand shift from an agency, I went to, for lack of better words, a slightly chaotic brand, because it was in a very chaotic space. We were just moving from uh, being a restaurant to being
Yeah.
full time retail.
Right.
So that was I enjoy I enjoy the chaos. And I've always said it to everybody that I've always been an agency person through and through. I don't see myself, uh, and a few years down the line, if anybody sees me at a corporate, please uh, screenshot this podcast and send it back to me, because I'm never going to be on the corporate
That's
side.
an interesting thing you said. So even that's what I wanted to ask both of you all. So now that you all have made that switch, right? You were an agency, then you went to the client side, and now you're back to the agency. Do you all ever see that you all could go back to the client side? Do you all think that? I mean, obviously, I'm sure you all have different POVs on this. So you've made yours pretty clear at this point, I think. But Jennifer, what do you think? Do you think you could go back to a client side?
I think I've missed this space. So I started at an agency with the vibe kind of related with what Schbang is, and I really missed that sort of culture. And I feel I fit in far better over here. So I think I hope to have like a very, very long stint here.
Let me
This
ask.
is home to me.
That's great to hear. But let me play devil's advocate again. Like I said, I've only been at the agency side. I've never worked on the other side of the business. What do you think the longevity is of like the agency life versus the client life, right? Like let's change it to a little shift, which maybe a lot of the younger people today I think care about. I'm not going to spend too much time on the work-life balance element, and I don't want to get into that. But work-life balance is a big topic that a lot of people I think today find integral to their job discovery process, or to their job, like to make that decision that okay, here this is the organization I want to work at. So when you look at the agency work-life balance versus you look at the client side work-life balance, and you look at it now again, like you'll have both I think been here for, you'll have been both in working for at least more than a decade. So now you also start to think right about that. The first 10 years is just that what I'm going to try to rise as fast as I can, I'm going to grow as much as I can. But then after 10 years you realize that okay, it's a race, it's a marathon, it's not a race. You need to sort of pace yourself, you need to understand how to sustainably grow. So what would you comment on the work-life balance at the agency, both the first time you all were at the agency side of it, then you all went to the client side, so you all can draw that stark comparison, and now when you all are back in the agency side of it, how is it different? So if you all can just give me your like points on that.
So for me, right, and this could be like a message to a lot of young young folks also, because we have plenty,
Right.
and a lot of agencies now are almost all young agencies. uh, Work life balance is very individualistic. I don't think it is related to an organization. You can be at an organization that is like 9 to 5, but you can still not have work life balance. It's how you deal with it, it's how you run. And I feel agencies in fact give you that independence, uh,
To plan your stuff.
to plan your stuff, right? You can be starting your, not that I recommend, but you can be starting your day at 1 p.m. And still be as effective as somebody who starts
Absolutely.
their days at 9 a.m. So work-life balance is completely an individual choice. It's what you do with those 24 hours. You want to work for 16 hours, you want to work for 8 hours.
Fair enough.
As long as your scales of uh, effort versus impact is intact, uh, it's an individual.
That's interesting. That's a very interesting way to put it. So, but again, I really appreciate that answer and I agree with you completely. But let me push you a little bit further, purely from the point of view of maybe a lot of potential listeners out there will disagree and say that, sometimes it's easy for you to say you're at a vice president position, you make the rules, you don't have to follow them, so you can do all of this work-life balance stuff for yourself. But if I were to ask you, just comparative to how was your life at White Owl in terms of like a Monday to Friday, what did it look like for you versus what your life looks like today? And what are the differences, like in terms of time management, not in terms of job? I'm not talking about job satisfaction or anything like that. Just like, what time would you get done? Did you have more time to work out? Did you have more time to hang out with your friends when you were on the client side versus here? And I mean, here also, I know the caveat comes that in the agency game, you make friends. So like, it's not like you don't have to worry about you going out with your colleagues. It's like going out with your friends and all of that. But if these specific two scenarios, how was your life different outside of work when you were at White Owl versus at Schbang?
For me, because of the industry that I was in, I had to anyway socialize a lot.
Got it.
A lot of my work was events.
Understood.
Going out. It was mostly like events, right?
Right.
Also, I think I was there for 3 years, out of which I think 50% of I think a year and a half went in COVID,
Got it.
if not 2 years, right?
Got it.
So that the COVID time was similar for everybody. But I'll talk the year going into COVID, 2019.
Yeah.
It was I had a ball. That for me, I was just shifting from an agency to a brand. Also, I was perfectly happy at the agency where I was. So it was a shift where I wanted to work with that brand.
Got it.
That's why I made
Got
that
it.
shift. So early, the first 1 year was starting off the day at around 10:30, and I used to be done. It was at 10 to 7, 10 to 6 kind of job that everybody looks for. I had ample time to hang out in the evening with friends. So if that is what you call the balance,
That's not what I
then-
call it, but I mean that's
or
what a lot of
anybody,
people would
if
define
anybody
it
has
as
to
today,
call
yeah.
balance, yeah, that was balance. And I think then COVID threw a curveball for everybody. So uh, I think 2020 is when the needle shifted from work-life balance to what I call work-life integration, and a lot of people, will have opposing views to it. I think that's when work-life got integrated. What people forget uh, post-COVID is that we brought work home.
Yeah.
We
Fair.
didn't take home to work, right? So I think now it's time that we start bringing that divide.
That's very interesting.
Back
And what,
again.
like
Yeah.
Jennifer, what would you say? I mean, I think like he said, interestingly, his niche or his genre was so different that it was a little bit more social oriented. But yours, I think, because it's structured and it's a much larger amount of people. You did 8 years on the client side, right? 8.5 years on the client
Yes.
side, and you worked with organizations that are 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people. So, like, how is that different for you in terms of work-life balance?
In
Because
fact, it's quite ironic because I had a 4-year-old son and then I decided to come back to the agency, knowing well enough, saying that, people come with this whole mindset that agency life is quite crazy, including my parents telling me, saying at this stage in your life when you need to spend time with your son, you're actually getting into a busy job. But I completely agree. It's actually what you make out of it. You can be very disciplined. I'm an early morning person. You can get up, knock off the important stuff that you have to do, structure your day in a way that you respond to the clients when they are functioning, and then you can wrap up at a decent hour. So it's totally dependent on you. You can either be disciplined or you can do it the way you please. You have to figure it out. It's about how you get the work done. You can action it one day prior, or you can action it when the brief comes, and you can do it in bits and pieces to get it done in a
Fair.
rational manner. So it's dependent on you, and my work life is very integrated. I'm not somebody who will not acknowledge you on a weekend,
right.
or I will not respond to it. If it thinks, there are some things that I snooze to a Saturday morning at 8 o'clock because I feel I'll be in a better mind space to respond then. So it's entirely up to you.
Interesting.
You get it done, it's your job.
Interesting. Let me put it in another way. You know how there are lots of fires, right? I mean, the agency game is just mayhem. Do you feel that there's more of a propensity for there to be a fire on like just before a holiday or on a weekend at the agency side of it versus at a client side of it? Maybe it's like, hey, like, let's just tackle this on Monday.
Not really, because even when you're at the agency, when you're at the client side, you have to still work with the agency.
Right.
And if your topical post is not coming when it's meant to come, there's still going to be fire because there's a long line of people that you have to get a sign off from.
Got
And
it.
of course, there's legal and compliance and all. So it's not like it's much easier there. It's the same. It's about how you manage it and what you want to make out of it.
Interesting.
So it's not like it's rosier on the other end. It's about what drives you and what gives you satisfaction at the end of the day.
Fair enough. I mean, I want to go into like a conversation about like a very hot topic, salary, and what most people assume that big jump is. But before that, because I think you brought up a very interesting point when you were talking about your experience. COVID, right? COVID changed the way people work. But today, when I looked at it across, say, my friends who worked maybe on the client side, who have their own businesses, who are working at maybe on the technical side of things, the way their lives were just absolutely so uncertain about, okay, can I go to work? Can I not go to work? How do I do this? How do I call my lawyer? How do we do court cases? How do we get permission? All of that stuff was super chaotic. Whereas for us as an agency, yeah, the first maybe 3 days, because I remember this, I was not even in the country, like I was traveling and everyone got that notice, you got to come back. It's the world shutting down. And I remember calling Harshit and being like, what are we going to do, man? And he's like, don't worry about it. It's going to take 3 days. We got to get a system to people's houses. What changes? What do we need? We just need internet and we need people to work together as a team and everything will be fine. So do you feel that, again, I think both of you all were in your client roles when COVID hit.
Yes.
Was it more difficult for you all? Was it like a little bit more uncertain because heavier structure, more bureaucracy, how to navigate, because all systems, all processes change, right? Like from a point where I was not allowed to wear a cap in an ATM, now I'm allowed to cover my full face when I go to an ATM. So the full world changed. Did life change for you all that much? Did it become like interesting, tough? What was it like?
I think for me at the client side, initially it was a little dicey because the clients were trying to figure out, because stores were shut, everything was shut, they suddenly need to figure out what D2C was.
Right.
So there was a little more focus on the digital manager then, because that manager had to get stuff off the shelves, set up Shopify accounts. And in fact, I worked with Schbang in most of these capacities. So I think digital was like a great
place to be in.
During COVID, because there was a lot that you could do and you were heavily reliant on partners such as Schbang.
Fair. So, okay, so you had a product that was still an everyday, you working on products that were still everyday essentials, let's call them as they were termed.
Partially and not.
Sure, but like what I mean
Yes.
is that these are things that I could get at a regular convenience store. You were working on a beer brand, right? So that was super.
It was a complete shut shop, right? When we started off, I think the first, and I think for everybody during COVID, the first 1 week or 10 days or even couple of weeks were all, it was like,
How do we get alcohol?
it was also very, yeah, I mean, I had calls coming in saying,
My father told me, I don't care what you do, I don't care about
Yeah.
anything. I need to find out what is happening. I don't have any beer at home. So like it was a real panic for a lot of people because you were at home
and
all
I
day.
remember stocking up, right? Because it was easier for me to stock up. But
If
I
the
think,
authorities are listening,
yeah,
COVID norms. But
I think I think we were out in exactly 10 days.
out of stock.
Like, no, what I had at home,
Okay.
right? Because then I had people calling me saying that, do you have?
Yeah, I'm sure.
Do you have any? But from a work front, it was honestly the first time we were very prepped up for this summer, because we had a couple of launches coming in. And if you've been in the alcobev industry in Maharashtra, you will remember that even the 2019 summer wasn't very rosy because of the election time.
Yeah.
And you had dry days almost every other day.
Correct. All over the
So
country.
this time we were prepping, like we had injected the market with a lot of inventory because we had a couple of launches and we were very sure that,
It's gonna
people
hit.
looking over,
Yeah.
like, summer of 2020, nobody was expecting,
COVID.
Feb, we had a all like management meet in Goa. It was supposed to be a very, successful summer for us. And suddenly, I think in the middle of this I remember happened 22nd of March. By April, we knew that,
The summer's gone.
the summer's gone. The inventory is all locked out. By the time shops would have opened up, a lot of our stock would have expired. So business was completely at a standstill. What I liked about the organization was that we decided to utilize that time to completely start trainings across the organization.
Got it.
Something that we do very effectively at Schbang is learning and development.
Hmm.
Those modules didn't exist there. We started those trainings, right? We started training people in marketing. We started training
Understood.
marketing people in sales. We started training for products across, how is beer made? What are the products?
Hmm.
So we knew that when the shops open, at least this time, since we can't sell, we might as well educate
And get everybody to be like an all-rounder.
educate everyone. Also, I think something that COVID gave rise to is cross functionality. For me, the biggest takeaway from COVID was that people can talk about specialization and niche, but I think a lot of cross-functional roles survived, or people who could do cross-functional roles,
Correct.
they survived the COVID layoff.
Fair enough.
What people had to do. So that worked out for me. I personally spent a lot of time. It was a new brand, right? I spent that entire lockdown coming up with the brand guidelines because I had
Time
on
on
my
your
hand.
hands, yeah.
I put a whole brand surrogate in place because I had time on my hand. Something that was a personal achievement for me was I actually invented a board game, got it patented, and we were, sort of starting to sell as a brand surrogate. So there was a personal learning for me,
Hmm.
and there was learnings across the organization because that's how we utilized our time. And then every few weeks we would get a rumor saying now shops are opening up, but I think nothing opened up before June, July. June, July is when I
Yeah.
think everybody got.
Fair enough. I think
Yeah.
segueing, I have a couple of points more I want to talk about. I can segue into our next topic, I think, which is important also, is salary and money, right? Because that's a very real reason why people, I think, move from the agency side to the client side. First of all, let me ask, I mean, I have always felt that at the agency side, at least the organizations I've been fortunate enough to work at, have been able to generate, if you can generate value or you show how you can demonstrate the value of what you're asking for, they generally pay you. And I've been very blessed for that, at least touch wood. But it's a very common conception or misconception that, okay, I'm at X, I'm going to go to X times 2 when I go to the client side of it. Is that true?
Not really. You do get a bump when you switch from agency to client. But it's not like you get like 2x of what you're getting. So that is a complete misconception for sure.
Got it. And in terms of like sustained growth after, again, at like the agency, there are two sides to this, right? Yeah, one side is that, okay, if you can deliver exponential growth in terms of signing clients, retaining clients, doing vast activity, you'll probably be eligible for like a sometimes 30, 40, 50, even more than that percent incremental growth. Does that happen at the client side of it, or are you stuck by structure?
You're stuck by structure. You're fully stuck by that. Because like I said earlier, it's not something that is very natural to a lot of these large listed companies.
To let you just grow like that.
So unless the higher ups understand the importance of digital, and like otherwise they're just like giving you 10% of their mainline monies to go spend it off, saying, like go do something with that. Unless they have a very large digital cell and trying to kind of get you up the ranks because they see merit in what you come and bring forth to the table, you're otherwise stuck in it.
Got it.
And I think at the agency, there's massive growth. If you don't like one thing, you can do another thing. You can work on different brands. Everybody is really approachable, right till the top. So I think it's a far easier and more comfortable space to be at. I'm not saying comfortable like you can hang in there and...
No, I know what you mean. But you're saying that just in terms of challenge, work, satisfaction, growth.
There's always something new to do. And I think after you've gone to the client side, you've seen all the perks over there, you still want to come back and do work that you can be proud of.
Also, I think salaries or remunerations at agencies, your growth can be more exponential than a corporate.
You're talking about, let's just put it like bluntly for, I guess, viewers who are like looking to hear, is that if I am at a salary which I want to double up over a 5-year period of time, I'm better off at the agency. Is that a fair assumption to say? Because my growth
can
year
grow.
on year will be faster to reach that 100% mark than if I'm at a client.
If
typically.
you're good, what's stopping you? There's nothing that can stop you.
There are those limitations are not there. Okay, again, you were talking about that board game, right? So again, coming to the money point of view. Now, the board game is an interesting idea. Maybe it's something you personally believed in as well. But because you were at an organization that created the product, or you were at the brand, just to keep this whole agency versus brand narrative clear, you were at the brand, you were able to put your own money, the company gave you the money to deploy to see this project to life. Do you feel that if you had a similar thought process here at an agency side of it, and you did not have a client backing you, that you would get it done? Let's not talk about Schbang, because I know we talk about a lot of times we do invest in things that we believe in, but I'm talking about you all have both been at other agencies also. Do you feel as looking at it that way, that in that aspect the client side wins because they'll put more money or they'll deploy more confidence, let's call it, behind an idea, versus in maybe the agency side waits to have it bought?
It totally depends on who your manager is. Like in one of my experiences, my manager was like the top of the top in the company, and that is because she believed in the fact that she needed to bring about a radical change in some of the stuff that we had to do. So it was far easier to sell an idea or like anything, and I worked with Schbang through my experience there. So it was far easier to get it done, and there was a lot given on whether you believed in it and whether it would be radical enough to bring a change on digital. Because eventually you want to talk to your investors, you're going to have a meet, and you have to talk about how you're a new age organization in that space.
Got it.
So it depends on where you are at.
But I think a lot of organizations are like that,
Allowing you to sort of explore.
allowing you to explore. And I think if you have an idea, see, eventually, and this is for all the creative people, right? I feel an idea is only as good as if it can make you money, right? It's
That's
like a
true. I mean,
business,
but that's
right?
again you coming from a business POV, right? Because you understand it on a level that, okay, when you make your client's business, when you win, right? Like one of those sort of things. But today you said, right, creative people end up giving a lot of ideas, and a lot of times all of us here are also sold on those ideas. But for some reason, the client there just says no. So a lot of times you have to just let that go and move on to the next, right?
Yeah.
But if you were on the other side of the table and you had an idea that maybe, say, for whatever reason, your agency didn't believe in, but you really had the idea and you got a couple of people's buy, and you could really push that through as the client,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, that's
You can.
that's I think the thing that I was trying to get at.
Totally dependent on your manager.
Let's talk about the other part of the money, or like the perks, if you will, of working at a brand versus working at an agency. Now, a lot of agencies, I don't believe, I mean, there are a handful. I mean, this is something that we just recently announced. I think we're one of the first to be giving our employees insurance and stuff like that. But a lot of agencies, by and large, don't do the insurance. There are not a lot of the PF perks that come with it. There are not a lot of those. I mean, ESOP and all those are far flung away. Let's not even get into that. But offsite, travel bookings, team lunches, stuff like that. Is there, do you think, more perks in the client side, agency side? Where do you stand?
There are far more perks at the client side, even in terms of the might of the bonuses that you kind of take home.
Okay.
But
that's a note for those management members at Schbang who are listening. Bonuses need to be
It's all on corporate side. I've not been on a corporate. I was a startup brand. I didn't have all these
bonuses, perks.
bonuses
no, the
and
perks you're
no.
taken care of far better at a corporate. But then it's a choice you
It's
want
a
to
cost
make.
of, again, salary, right? Like that you take that 8%, 5% every year. You take all these perks and be happy. But at the end of the day, if you can put that money away in equity markets, you can buy all of that
It's
stuff
eventually
yourself.
what drives you. You still want a balance between what you take home so you can look after your family and work that will help you grow, win award-winning stuff, and just help you be more satisfied at the end of the day.
I think lump sum, no. Whether you're on corporate or whether you're at an agency side, like you started off saying, if you have value, you'll get money. It's just that if somebody had to, sit down, like if I had to sit and break down my salary, if she had to, when we were at the brand side, I think lump sum, it would come to the same value. It's how it's just corporates package. The CTC is just packaged differently, or it's packaged differently from brand to brand side.
But I've seen some of those perks coming in at Schbang also from my experience. So I think there are different ways that they're packaged at an agency. Now, some of the agencies are doing it, not all. So
got it. Let's maybe shift to the culture side of things, right? Because I think that's one huge draw of the agency game, the culture, the young people hanging out, similar interests, similar choices in terms of fashion, music, outing, whatever. And then when you're working in a creative process, all of that stuff just sort of harmonizes and comes together really well. That being said, that's the ideal case scenario, right? What's the culture like at a corporate? Is it that same? So, I mean, wherever I've been, again, I'm not saying that all are the same, but by and large, I mean, I've been around the block a little bit now. I've seen a few agencies also. By and large, teams bond really closely and you become friends with your colleagues. It becomes your work family. You have a work wife and all of those Gen Z terms that are thrown around. Is it similar on the corporate side of it, or is it similar on the client side of it? Rather, do you have that bond with your team? Are you that like closely knit, or are you working in silos where you've been brought on board at an organization for this key function? You handle your lane, I'll handle my lane. Once in a while, we can compare notes. What's it like?
So at the client side, the roles are definitely far more defined and structured. There's very little overlap or any room to overlap with what the peers in your immediate team are kind of doing.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that there's no bond. I've made some great friends from there. But definitely the agency side over here and the culture over here is far different. Obviously, I may be like almost 10 years older than a lot of the bunch of people here, but that doesn't stop me from actually bonding with a lot of people. And it's a far more fun space to be in. You can be yourself, more expressive in terms of what you have to say, how you want to say it, and how you put it forth. And I think the clients also do appreciate that because it shows because somewhere it may lack in their culture. When somebody's thinking out of the box and putting something in the deck there, they all kind of light up in their seats, and you do see that.
Got it. But okay, you said an interesting thing again about age, right? Do you think that there's a level, like, while, yeah, the culture might be stronger, but that also can be attributed to just the fact that it's youthfulness? Do you think that it's like a double-edged sword, right? Do you think that because at most agencies, the culture is young, kids who have, I wouldn't like to use the word kids, it's very this thing, but young adults who have maybe not seen enough exposure, experience, been around enough, do you think that there's a trade-off that, yeah, while the culture is good, it sometimes leads to immature or rash decisions? In comparison to at a corporate where things, because of just by virtue of the fact that people are older, there is more structure, that even though it's slower, it's done, let's say, right, or let's done the most pragmatic way. Do you see that trade-off happening?
So at the brand side, there's lots of structure. I think it's like overdone to a certain extent. To get one thing off the shelves, you'll have to go through like a long run of people to make it see the light of day. And that can get quite frustrating after a point because some of those people may come from a very different mindset. And you're looking at them spending like 25 years in an organization. They've not had exposure outside. The exposure is limited to the people who come in from external partners, right? So they are also in their ways in a certain way, and there's little room for risk or to do new
Got it.
stuff. But at an agency side, yes, there could be younger people, etc. So that is obviously got to be carefully managed, and sometimes there could be a slip up on that front, but it's something that you fix for. That is where there are people, you can move up the ladder much quicker at an agency. So there are 3 or 4 layers before a VP. So you kind of do
Got it.
help, groom, handhold, etc.
I think risk taking, and when you talk about culture, right? Something that I always say is that even bacteria has culture, right? But what bacteria doesn't have is care. And I think and I've seen this at all agencies. Agency bonds or agency friendships, in my opinion, tend to be slightly stronger because there's a touch of care in there, which I feel is absent from corporates.
Corporate.
So
Fair.
today, and at least that's how I try to function in a leadership role, is that I will always give, and I think some of my team members will vouch for it. I let them take risks, right? Because I'm that buffer.
Got
Or
it.
I know that,
You can jump in case you fall. I'm there.
I can jump, or I will give you that safety net, or at least buffer your fall a little bit. That may not be possible at corporates. It's your, like Bane said in Batman, right? Structures becoming shackles.
Got
That
it.
is I don't think that is
There in the agency side.
there in the agency side, because there is care and there's a
Talking about care
Yeah.
only, let me ask you, both of you have been leaders on the corporate side and you have both been leaders on the agency side of it. Do you feel, and again, this is not a depiction of the corporate side versus the agency side, but do you feel that you care or you go that little extra mile for your team here, or did you go that extra mile for your team on the corporate side of it?
Both sides, right? That is
I think it's both
Doesn't
ends.
change. You're
It
saying it
doesn't
doesn't
change.
change. Okay.
Because I think I've had I had a great manager in my first corporate stint, and I think it's largely to do with the manager that you get. So it's not to say that you don't have great friendships that bloom out of that. I think it can be great at both ends.
You know, there's also this constant conversation about how longevity of an agency, any agency, it's that it's like a 5-year, 10-year, 15-year run. There are the exceptions to the law, the WPPs, the Ogilvies of the world, but most there are now. I mean, since you all have started your career, since I've started my career, there was a point where there were maybe 4 or 5 agencies that you knew of in Bombay. Now, in every corner of every
Yeah.
street, there are two agencies. So, and they're easy come and they're easy go as well. So, do you think there's a reason that today a lot of our indie agencies, having been on both sides, a lot of our indie homegrown agencies are not being able to withstand the test of time? And by that, I don't mean they're necessarily shutting down or becoming bankrupt. It's just they're not at their heyday anymore. They lose key talent, they lose key clients, and then they sort of are in that process of win 3 clients, lose 2 clients sort of game. Do you think there's anything you can comment on that in terms of why you see that happening, having been on both sides?
It's the people.
It's purely that? You
It's
think it's only
purely people,
attributed to
right?
that?
Today, an agency will, I feel, places are made of people, right? You go to, I think a lot of people, we've also, I think, attracted key talent at Schbang because there is already some great talent at Schbang. So it's like talent attracts talent, right? Places are made of people. And if people don't exist at those places, then I feel those places will not exist. If people are there, if it's the same people, uh, or the core remains the same,
Right.
or the values remain the same. I've seen two reasons why any kind of agency that, or you said, any agency at their heyday don't exist anymore, is
Right.
if the people have left, or if the people who have left have not been able to transfer or leave behind that a little bit of legacy. If your OG culture doesn't remain, then the agency
Nothing will
will
remain.
And there's lots of people that comment saying, XYZ agency is not good anymore. Like when you're at the client side, you'll hear that during a
Yeah.
pitch. And I always used to correct them and said, it's not about that agency going off. It's about that one bad taste that you had. So don't judge it by that, because
Fair.
people can change and things can change. And
Absolutely.
you'd literally only move out a brand if your core team stopped managing it.
But don't you feel like it changes also in a way that today a lot of individuals don't put a lot of thought into switching from one agency job to the next, right? They'll be like, okay, cool, I'll go here, I got appraisal, I want 30% more, I'm going there. 1 year
That's
down the
not
line.
very mature.
But in a
though.
corporate side, you don't do that, right? Like that's what I'm trying to say, that when you're on the agency, when you're on the client side or the brand side of it, you don't take that so lightly. Is that because HR processes are more stringent on that side, or is it just because
You probably get gratuity after some time.
okay, so there's
it's
a
also perception, right?
Yeah.
They want to be, for them it's like I'm working at
HUL, PNG, whatever.
yeah, which I don't think is a problem for our agency,
Got it.
but maybe for the
But at the
smaller
client
ones.
side also, you'll take some time to show what you're worth, right? It's not like you can in a short stint show somebody what you've done.
Right.
Because you'd have like an IMC for the year, or you'd
Correct.
have like your stringent marketing calendar, you'd work on an AOP cycle. So it's very, very organized. So to be able to switch, you've
Takes
got
time.
to have done enough, or the next person is going to ask why you're even switching. Was it just a bad manager?
That's interesting. So that's good for Gen Z people who look for instant gratification. The agency game is better, you would say, that in terms of
It's far more quicker here.
realization and
Yeah.
encouragement. Speaking of that, I mean, I think you spoke briefly about how you had an amazing manager upfront. Mentorship is another topic that I'd like to just talk about in comparison when you compare, say, an agency versus the brand. Again, I've been very, very blessed. I think that both the people who I've looked at as people who I want to learn from, or who are teaching me, or who have sort of taken me under their wing, have also, I would say, cared about me on a personal level and have looked for my personal development as well. do you feel like, so again, you can vouch for this, Jennifer. I think you're in a unique position because you've worked with Harshal before when he was at Foxy, where he was figuring it out. You've gone and worked at the corporate side of it, had a leader or a mentor, someone who could guide you through that, and now you've come back to Schbang as an ode, I guess, to the fact that you liked working with Harshal that much, or you trust in his vision that much that you think he's there. From a mentorship or from a you personal, and this is only you, I'm not talking about anybody else, where do you think you got more of that growth that fueled you to become who you are today? Do you think it was on the, like, when you were at the agency
Definitely
side?
agency.
Okay.
Because when you're at the client side, it's very, very dependent on what your initiative is,
Okay.
your personal initiative, that your learning does come to a stop in a specialized role.
Understood.
If you're in like a brand head, category head
No one's
role,
going to force you to learn though.
yeah, nobody's going to force you to learn. It's your outlook. It's a very specialized thing. You have to figure it out. You read what you've got to, you enroll for what you need to. Yes, my first organization at the corporate side sent me for a couple of workshops. They brought in a couple of speakers. I got great exposure. I got to travel to the Google and the Facebook headquarters in San Francisco. So I think that organization did a fab job at it. But it is still dependent on you being high on initiative. At an agency end, your learning is every minute. You can overhear something about another department person sitting next to you, and that could spark an idea for something that you've got to do. You may not call it out, but it's something that will definitely stay and etched in your head, and you will do it somehow. So I think if you've got to grow in a niche space and you've got to grow in digital, then you're far better in an agency.
Got it. Plus, I guess also as an agency head, it's
Yeah.
your best interest to make sure you look at talent and you try to nurture it, because that talent's going to make you money
Correct.
over a period
And I,
of
in
time.
fact, worked with Schbang through most of
Yeah.
it. Like more than 90% of my corporate experience, I worked with Schbang because I felt that the agility, the understanding, and the desire to do good work was at par. So I knew that if I had a partner to do it, I could actually put it together.
Interesting thing again that you said you worked with Schbang as the client, and now you're working at Schbang with the client
Life
potentially.
came back a full circle
Literally
a couple
that.
of times.
But tell me now today, when you were the client side and say you were being talked to by the Schbang team, for example, and there were things that are being told you, whatever deadlines are going to be missed or this is not going to happen. The way you viewed it, I mean, there obviously you have to give answers to your department heads and you have a number or you have a date by which you have to deliver. Having come on this side now, do you think that that perspective, that experience has enriched you from which way? Is it such that now as an agency you know what to say to your client to buy more time, or do you know how to tell your agency counterparts ki, okay guys, this is how it works over there, there's no there's no scope. That was long. I've gone 45 minutes without cussing on the first Banging It podcast. That's pretty great. Many more cusses to come. But coming back to it, do you think that, or you've learned that maturity to be able to bring that to the agency side and tell them? So, like, is that something today as an agency we should be looking at, that, hey, let's maybe talk to our clients more on their day-to-day SOP so that we understand what their week to week looks like so we can manage our workloads?
So I think it's the latter piece as well. But even when I was at the client side, I think I had to bring like the sweet spot of where I can push Schbang or any partner for that matter, or where I should not. And I had to kind of bring that sense. So it was highly appreciated. Like they would appreciate when I told them saying, look, you expected it to come by end of day, but there is copy, there is design, there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's not like there's a machine sitting there and chucking it to you over email. So you need to be a little rational. So I had to be the one balancing it out. But I knew that if the agency told me that it'll take 45 days, I knew where I could kind of push.
He's going to comment because I know what he's going to comment.
Saying, not me. I'm saying a lot of Shbangers are going to leave comments.
But I think it's a sweet spot that you've kind of got to bring together.
Aayush Vyas has learned the other side on how to lie to the client and buy more time, no?
No, not at all.
No, we're just joking. All of his clients love you all.
Yeah.
But, so I mean, that's interesting. So you're saying the mentorship element, I think you're saying comes out more strongly here. You're getting that growth, that more personalized touch.
Correct. And
I
you're
also
trying
feel
to...
that the younger ones, I feel a lot of the Gen Zs, there are very few who are looking for mentorship. And correct me if I'm wrong, right? When I was starting out, I looked for mentors.
Right.
And mentors also is like they're like therapists, right? You go through a couple of them before you find
absolutely.
the right one. I have very few, like in a team of like 100, whatever, 20 odd people, there may be 3 or 4 who are looking for mentorship. I don't think many of
You think that's because
them
they're not looking for mentorship here because again they think that the agency is not a place where like I'm expendable. Again, talking about a couple of points I brought up. You said that on the client side or on the brand side, there's a lot of specialized roles. So you're being hired for a very specific purpose versus in an agency they're a little bit more. I wouldn't call them generic, but there are multiple copywriters, there are multiple creatives, there are multiple designers, there are multiple VPs, there are multiple whatever. Do you think that that's why a lot of people today are not looking for that mentorship or not looking for at this as a long-term career path because they think of it themselves as, again, my colorful personality, not any depiction of what Schbang is going to say, but like cockroaches, for lack of a better word, stamp one out, 50 lookalikes show up in their place. Is that what's stopping a lot of, you think, youngsters today or breaking that allure of making this look at as like a long-term career?
So if I had to answer this, at the first corporate that I worked at, they had something known as the 100 Leaders Program.
Okay.
And they, in fact, identified people and they assigned you a mentor who was from the organization. And these were people who were in higher up positions, not necessarily your department because it's very limited when it comes to digital. And my mentor was the CEO of the organization. And he brought a completely different spin to my thought process, helped me kind of understand how the culture is different and how to kind of make people do what you need them to do. So how is it that you can navigate around different personalities, different people, and where you should speak, where you should not speak, and how to kind of do simple things like how to balance your workout, how to structure a presentation so that you can grab X person's attention versus a Y person's attention. So I think mentorship was offered at the corporate as well. So I wouldn't say that it's not there. It's just about the culture that space
Got it.
embodies.
I think in agencies maybe now they are not looking for mentorships, like, or it's not being like in corporate. You said that from
It's a structure over there that you
or
have
at
to
an
do it.
organization level, like even in my organization, there was a program, like there was a mentorship program. That is again a program. What I was trying to say is that on an individual level, I don't see that
Got it.
that culture of
got
let
it.
me find.
But we don't have that also, right? Like in most agencies today, there isn't a
We're quite
program.
large
There's,
also.
huh?
We're quite large.
Shebang
Yeah.
isn't, I would like to believe, an anomaly. We're not like the regular mold. I would not
Yes.
say that anything that I'm talking about today is only a representation of Shebang. I'm talking about maybe a sample size of 10 or 15 agencies that I would believe I know well enough because either I have friends or have worked there or know the promoters, know the owners. I don't think that that sort of leadership training, like getting your leaders to grow together or to understand the entire framework, happens at an agency as well as it happens at a corporate. This is my perception.
Yeah.
Again, that at an agency you'll groom individual team leaders or business units to grow themselves and become the best at what they are. Whether you grow an SEO guy to be the best SEO person he can be, tech to be tech, production to be production, and so on. But they're all thinking of it as I am production, I am tech, I am this, I am that, I have to do this only. They're not thinking that, okay, how do I integrate with the other department and a third department, where a corporate does that more frequently, like where sales, marketing, logistics all sit together and a grand master plan is being like charted out. So I would say that that happens, you would agree, right? That happens more at the corporates in terms of big picture thinking, and that's something that maybe we as agency folk can take a page out of their book for.
That happens annually, I would say.
Okay, so it's one-off. It's not
It's
like
a
a regular
one-off.
conversation.
It happens annually. It'll probably happen at your offsite, or it'll happen when you've got like a new product launching, where you need to build like a go-to-market plan of
Got
what
it.
to do with it.
Got
That's when you'd have everyone huddling together.
it. Got it.
So it should happen at an agency level.
It should
I feel.
happen, definitely.
At
And I
any
think it does,
organization.
right? When we give a lot of our plans, you have to work across because it's not a solo plan that you're giving. There's so many 360 touch points that we cover in everything that we put now, right? From tech to maximize to theta, etc. There's a lot of opportunities that you cover there. So
Solid. I think most of my topics that I want to, there's maybe one topic that I'd like to talk about. Agility. Like in terms of, like you said, we discussed a lot in terms of process, structure, orientation of corporates versus agencies. What happens again, like what I've noticed when I've been working with clients is that
if there's a problem that I have that requires me to navigate maybe 4 or 5 departments, and I don't have the time to necessarily sit and go to those 5 department heads, I can just go like straight to, for example, the MD or the CEO or the CFO or the CCO, whoever of the company, and just be like, yo, this is the situation. I know I have to follow X, Y, Z processes, but I really don't have the time. So can I just circumvent everything? And he or she is in a position to take that decision that then and there, like, yes. And all systems go. So I have that ability to like sidestep protocol. But is that opportunity always present in a corporate? I don't think so, because when I was dealing with a large corporate, I would tell them stuff like, you know, if I don't act on this now, it's not going to be as meaningful in a week or 10 days, which is it's going to take for you to get me my approval. And they're like, yeah, that's cool. So be it, dude. Tough shit.
So there is this mindset saying, you know, at the agency, everything is fluid. You can break some of the rules, etc. At a corporate, there is no room for that. But I think at agencies as well, there are rules to follow. There are timelines. There are processes. So it should be fair to both. Actually.
No, I agree with you. I'm not saying that that the agencies don't have rules or agree, but I'm saying that in extenuating circumstances, we have the option of, I would not say breaking the rules, but we flout those rules for the greater good. That option is not always there at corporates. Do you think
No,
that makes
it's
them less
rare.
efficient or more efficient as a?
No, it doesn't. I think the two sides are corporates are more at if at corporate you tend to be more anticipatory, right? And
Yeah, you're setting the
like-
timelines, right?
like
That's what
now
I've
you know
always
that
assumed.
if you've been burned once, then you know that if I have to do an X thing, it is by default going to take 6 weeks. So I'm going to start planning 6 weeks in advance. At an agency, while there is more fluidity, you might end up becoming more reactionary. Then it becomes more anticipatory versus reactionary. I feel a balance of both is required.
And even at the corporate, sometimes you may have to kill your idea just with the thought process of how long it would take to see the light of day and what you'd have to go through to make it happen. So it's
But an
kind of a
agency,
balance.
we fight for ideas. You can check out our latest film that we've done, something that took 5 months, but we fought for that idea.
And you got it done.
And we believed in it, yeah.
I think with that, I covered all the academic parts. Now I'll go to some dirty parts. Let's have some fun. We'll have a quick rapid fire round, because this is actually, I'm thinking about the kind of questions I'm asking now, more about which were going through my mind. I don't know if I should ask all of them. But let me just ask you all some simple things. Let's keep it like very light. What, according to you, is the one thing that you do not miss about the corporate life? One thing, quick answers, guys. Now this has to be fun.
The hierarchy,
Yeah, structure.
the structure,
What is one thing that you do miss about the corporate world?
the perks.
And for you?
For me, it wasn't but yeah, a little bit of balance, because it was balance across. That everybody was, that work-life balance
Was there?
was there. I don't miss it, but it was there because everybody had to do it.
Got it. And one thing about the agency thing that you cannot let go of, something about the agency world that you love about everything, the chaos. For you. Yeah, you're so
It's the chaos for me as well.
both chaos
About how I
mongers.
can help, like, put structure
Future
to the
applicants
chaos.
into their teams and solutions, just remember, chaos. They've said it here.
Yeah.
And if there was one message you would give to like someone who's right now finishing up their BMS course and looking at that option of, oh, should I go and work as an intern at like a big corporate and be someone's whipping, I said I'm not going to use dirty words, but yeah, and or come to the agency side of it and do that. You'll have to slog, right? The first 3-4 years you're going to slog like a mule at the agency life as well. You're going to make those dirty reports. You're going to have to run behind designers. How would you guide them having
Come to
straddled
the
both worlds?
agency.
First.
Because you would actually learn what's an offshoot of your course versus if you went with that to a brand side. It's
Theoretical.
not going to be.
It's about
that way.
tying a floater and going into the baby pool versus just jumping into the deep, right? And we all know that jumping into the deep will teach you swimming quicker.
Nice.
Nice.
Interesting. So I think with that very like sharp business quote, I'm going to put an end to the episode of season 3 of the Schbanging It podcast. We hope you all liked our perspective on how you don't need to go to the client side anymore, guys. The agency side is way better. And hr@shbang.com is where you apply.